Alright, what's up everybody, and welcome to episode number 30 of Uncovering Unexplained Mysteries for Wednesday, January 18th, 2017. We've turned 30. I mean, not like age-wise, but, you know,
almost there. But...
Yeah, almost there chronologically. I'm here with my fellow brother-in-arms, Mike. How you doing, Mike?
Interesting choice of words, as always.
Yes.
I am doing fine. Just got back from this Mexican food restaurant. It was fine, but the service was kind of, It took too long to get us our drinks, then took too long to get us our order, and then took too long to get us our bill. So, food was fine.
Yeah,
service could be better.
I had Mexican a few nights ago. A place called La Nopalera. I have no idea if it's anywhere else in the world, but it's here in Jacksonville. They have like fucking 6 locations. It's really good.
Went to a place called the Margarita Factory.
Any restaurant with the name Factory in it, I'm just kind of like, turned off. Like the Cheesecake Factory. Like,
Man, they have fucking amazing cheesecake though.
Yeah, but they like try to do other shit there too, like actual food.
I know, and also like not serve police officers, so that's another problem. Yeah,
they don't serve police officers.
There was like a scandal where like some cheesecake factory somewhere was not serving police officers for some reason.
Huh. When I think of factory, I think of sludge and chains and oil and like pneumatic devices and shit like that. Like I'm not thinking about like. You know,
delicious cheesecake.
Like bistro. That brings thoughts of tastiness and bread and
bistro like, to me brings thoughts of pretentious hipsters.
Whatever. It still brings the thoughts of food to my mind. But when I think of factory, I think of like they're just
a coffee shop.
They're just pumping this out by the number, you know, just pumping out cheesecakes.
The spaghetti factory.
Yeah. Like there's no love going into these dishes. They're mass produced. Like McDonald's should be called the Burger Factory, you know.
Yeah, I want to see that new McDonald's movie, The Founder, with Michael Keaton. That looks really good.
Oh, I did not hear about that.
Yeah, it's coming out on Friday. It came out in select theaters in December, and Michael Keaton plays Roy Kroc, who is the original founder of McDonald's. Now, McDonald's doesn't really want you to know this, but they actually did try to get this film not released. They were like, no, please don't, because apparently Roy Kroc was not this kind benefactor, this amazing guy like McDonald's would like you to believe. McDonald's was actually a restaurant before the actual chain. It was this restaurant owned by these two brothers with the last name McDonald. And they had come up with a way to streamline burger manufacturing, to make burgers. And Roy Kroc, who was this, shrewd businessman who was just having a hard time selling mixers and stuff like that door to door, he saw an opportunity and he ended up trying to create some sort of franchise deal with them. Things kind of got strained, and then he decided, you know what, I'm going to do the dirty thing, and I'm going to buy the property around the area. And then he ended up actually building a McDonald's right next to the original McDonald's and put it out of business.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, he's a very shrewd businessman. But he also came up with stupid ideas. Like he called it a burger because he was trying to find a diet burger. And his brilliant idea was to replace the patty with a slice of pineapple.
Ew.
Yeah.
Yeah, anytime you become this big, successful conglomerate, like Disney and all that, like the heads of these places.
Well, I heard Walt Disney was not the nicest guy either.
I heard he was just a straight up racist. Like he did not like.
Well, that explains Song of the South.
I mean, he did not like him. He did not like him some blacks, and he did not like him especially did not like him some Jews.
And also is very particular in who he would allow in his park. For the longest time, and also for the longest time for employees, they couldn't have long hair or beards or anything like that.
Yeah, well, we got to keep the goddamn hippies out of my park. Damn draft dodgers, cut your hair.
So Walt Disney is Hank Hill? Okay.
I tell you what, Yes, he is. So anyway, welcome to the podcast, everybody. This is our typical bullshit talk before we actually get to the segments that you guys all love so very much. Or actually, the consensus is you think it's okay, which is fine by me because I can live with okay. If you like us, you can like us on Facebook. It's facebook.com/uncovering unexplained mysteries. Or if you want to donate to us on Patreon, you can do that as well. It's patreon.com/uncovering unexplained mysteries. You get some bonus content on there. It's worth at least checking out the page to see what kind of perks are available. And I did notice after our last episode, and I'm glad you guys are still with us, after the last episode at Kentucky militia shooter, we kind of got into gun control a little bit, talking about gun stuff.
Yeah.
And I noticed we lost a donor on Patreon the next day.
Was it a big donor or was it,
It doesn't matter, Mike.
It doesn't matter. All the donors matter. All of them matter. But really, we kind of expected that. I mean, you kind of walk into a hornet's nest when you deal with subjects like that. I was actually, there were some things somebody corrected me on, and I actually did acknowledge that on our group, and I made some mistakes, like, illegal to own a certain amount of ammunition. I did not know. Now I know. I know sometimes I might sound like I know it all and I know everything. I don't. I just talk about what I know. I can't really discuss things off the top of my head based on things that I don't know. So if I don't know and people call me out on it and let me know, I'm definitely more than willing to say I was wrong. And I'm definitely wrong there.
See, that's the rub when putting out content on the internet is normal people who don't do anything online or they don't put themselves out there, they can go through life every single day being wrong all the time, but we only have to be wrong once for people to jump on us about something. Like for me, when I did on my YouTube channel, I did a video where I was taste testing German food, and just as a little joke, there's a little sketch or a little bit in the video where I show an up close picture of this German chocolate bar that's got the most Aryan looking boy on there I've ever seen, and I play the German national anthem. And you think, and there was no Nazi symbolism or anything like that. I was just saying, man, this kid looks so damn Aryan. And I didn't know this until after I released the video. But apparently in Germany, it's very offensive to play their national anthem from the very beginning of the song, to play the first two stanzas.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing that you would not really know if you're not German. So
yeah, so the country officially recognizes only the third stanza of the song as their national anthem, because the first stanza talks about from this river to this river, Germany, 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 but apparently those rivers are like inaccurate borders, and Germany didn't even occupy those areas. And then like the second stanza,
I wonder why they didn't edit that then.
Who knows? It was a long time ago. People, just like, well, fuck it. I've never seen that river, and we don't have a map or GPS, so I'm assuming that that's correct. And then the second stanza is talking about our wine, our women, our song, or something like that. Mm-hmm. And apparently people see that as misogynistic, talking about, like, their women and objectifying, whatever. And then even more so...
I don't know why that would be objectifying, but okay.
I guess they're talking about women like they're objects or something. I don't know. I mean, you could derive so many. I mean, there's so many people out. In
today's day and age, you can make anything politically incorrect.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, then there's the third group of people who want to yell Nazi at every single thing that's affiliated with Germany. So there's people saying, well, it was around during World War II, and blah blah blah. So yeah. I mean, you don't know what you don't know. There was no possible way for me as an American to know that was in bad taste.
I probably could have known about the weapons stuff, but I don't know. I mean, I'm the point of this podcast is to talk about the case. It's not to talk about gun control laws. If I was going to go, or gun laws in general, if that was what it was about, I would have done a lot of research.
Yeah, I kind of steered it in that direction. My bad. Okay, so anyway, we got all that shit out of the way.
There's a couple cases that there's one Unsolved Mysteries related, and there's another one that isn't. We thought might be, worth just mentioning real quick. The first one is about D.B. Cooper, right? There's like a little sort of break in the case, which is interesting because I remember last time we said it's officially closed, and now we're like, oh no, wait.
Just kidding, guys.
Wait a second.
Yeah, so there's this article talking about scientists say that they may have new evidence in D.B. Cooper case. I swear to God, if this news article... Okay. Don't you love how you just can't go to an internet article anymore without a fucking
ads.
Video popping up at the very top that just tells you everything the article's going to say? Like where...
And then it automatically plays, and you have to press pause or mute.
Yeah. And then the volume's like always fucking way louder than anything else in the world. It's like,
It's a jump scare.
Yeah, exactly.
Jump scare dudes.
But it's like, guys, are you trying to dumb us down as a people? Like, let's not have them read it. Let's just tell them everything they need to know in a video at the very top. And, for those losers out there who actually know how to read, they can read the article.
Well, that's why journalism is dying. That's why I don't have a lot of, actual, newspapers, newspapers are dying off. Magazines are dying off, and journalism in general is dying off, and it's all basically being a lot of internet stuff. People are technically blogging on major, news sites.
Yeah, and there's a lot more opinion being thrown in shit now than actual facts, I've noticed. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. So this article is talking about how a band of amateur scientists selected by the FBI to look for clues in the world's most infamous skyjacking may have found new evidence in the 45-year-old case. Good Lord, 45-year-old case. Yep. Jesus. Time's going by, passing me by. They're asking the public's help because of potential leads that can link the hijacker knows D.B. Cooper to the Puget Sound aerospace industry in the early 1970s. The scientific team has been analyzing particles removed from the clip-on tie left behind by Cooper after he hijacked a Northwest Orient passenger jet in November 1971. A powerful electron microscope found more than 100,000 particles on the old J.C. Penney tie, including cerium, strontium sulfide, and pure titanium. Oh, they just bombarded me with all them scientific words. I didn't know that was coming. I would have been more nervous reading that had I seen those words coming up. Quote, these are what they call rare earth elements. They're used in very narrow fields for very specific things, end quote, said Tom Kay, lead researcher for the group that calls itself Citizen Sleuths. Kay said the elements were rarely used in 71 during the time of Cooper's daring leap with a parachute from the passenger jet. One place they were being used was for Boeing's high-tech supersonic transport plane, which was being developed with government funding from the 1960s and 70s. Kay wonders if Cooper could have been a Boeing employee or contractor who wore the tie to work. A classy guy, clip-on tie. The tie, quote, the tie went with him into these manufacturing environments for sure, so he was not one of the people running these manufacturing machines. He was either an engineer or a manager in one of the plants, Kay said. Kay says Boeing was developing cutting-edge monitors like radar screens that use some of the elements found on the tie. Kay says the public's help is needed, particularly from old-timers with experience in the aerospace industry in the Pacific Northwest. The scientists would like to hear theories from the public on what those materials could have been used for. They hope the information can help build a profile for Cooper. Quote, someone may have been able to look at those particles and say, oh my gosh, I know what that means, having those particles on the tie, end quote. Tipsters can reach this group through the contact tab on the Citizen Sleuth website, blah-da-da, blah-da-da, blah-da-da.
To be honest, it sounds like clickbait or something that this company, this Citizen Sleuths group is like, oh man, we need to get our name out there. We need people to, actually give us more cases to work on or make it so what we're doing isn't completely pointless. Oh, we have a new break in this D.B. Cooper case. It doesn't seem like it's going to identify who the guy is. It just says, oh, well, it might show where the guy might have worked.
Yeah.
If anybody is still alive or remembers.
I mean, with modern day forensics, though, they can kind of go back and relook at some of these cases and use stuff like that to,
yeah, but it seems rather circumstantial to me.
I mean,
just to me personally.
it would be circumstantial if they said that they knew someone who had these elements on their tie, but they didn't actually have the tie. That would be circumstantial.
But it also just sounds kind of, I don't know. It just doesn't seem like this is a smoking gun.
It's not a really juicy piece of info.
Yeah, they're not looking. This is not the smoking gun that DB Cooper case enthusiasts or people who are working on the case were looking for 45 years. This is like, oh, well, there's some traces of some stuff on the tie. Okay, cool. All right. What else?
Yeah.
Is that it?
Yeah. Not super juicy, but I don't know.
It's interesting. It's interesting. It's definitely worth talking about. But I can see why the government would still be like, no, the case is still closed. We're not opening the case up for, traces of some substance on a tie. We don't even know exactly where it could. It's theorized. It could have come from some place that this guy was working in at Boeing or whatever, or maybe it's a conspiracy thing. Maybe he was working for Boeing, and then they want to cover things up. I don't know.
And it's all somehow amounting to Trump's presidency being delegitimized. And Trump's going to send an angry tweet out to these people.
To be like, his campaign was funded by the DB Cooper money.
Yeah, exactly. That's how Trump's dad was actually DB Cooper, and that's how he got the funds to start his business. We should talk shit about Donald Trump on the podcast just so he'll mean tweet us, so it'll get our name out more. But I'm not going to get into politics because everything.
That's opening up Pandora's box.
Yeah, and not the good Pandora website where you can listen to music on either. Yeah, everything.
I find that ironic. That website is called Pandora. It's like, do you know what that represents? That doesn't represent opening up a box and it's awesome music. No, it was opening up a box and unleashing everything horrible upon this world.
Well, honestly, I found that anytime I put in an artist I like, the other stuff they suggest for me, I 9 times out of 10 I'm like, this shit sounds nothing like the artist that I put in. Because Pandora is supposed to be like, oh, you typed in Smashing Pumpkins, so here's a bunch of other bands that sound like Smashing Pumpkins. And so I type in Smashing Pumpkins, and it gives me a Smashing Pumpkins song that they play on the radio all the time. And so
maybe it is like Pandora's box for music. It's just all these shitty bands.
I skip it, and then it plays Bush, and then it plays some other Nirvana, and I'm like, dude, Nirvana.
Even Bush, I can't even. I mean, I've only heard one song of theirs from the American Werewolf in Paris soundtrack, Mouth. And that doesn't sound like Smashing Pumpkins.
Yeah, I mean, they're not a bad band, but they don't sound like Smashing Pumpkins at all.
Either is Nirvana. That's a real stretch.
Yeah.
But anyway, there's another case that you wanted to talk about. It's one about some UFO footage.
Yeah, this was sent to us. I think it was by one of your subs, actually. It might be Eddie or someone like that. I don't know. Someone sent us this article, and I thought it was pretty interesting. It was off the coasttocoastam.com website, which, I mean, God, I love that radio show. I especially loved it when Art Bell was hosting it. I would love to get Art Bell on this show. That'd be awesome.
Yeah. Sometimes the show has a lot of legitimate stuff. Other times it's kind of questionable. But
oh yeah, absolutely. But I mean, just the fact that it exists at all on terrestrial radio, I think is pretty amazing.
It is pretty cool.
Even though they don't play it until 1 o'clock at night. But
yeah,
hey, I'm up. I'm up. I hear it.
I remember listening to bits of it on the radio when I was riding with my dad while he was driving truck late at night, and it's a perfect time for that show. It's a creepy show anyway. So late at night, it's all dark outside, and
yeah, and Art,
just imagine listening to it in a dark room.
These hosts have to be so attuned to dealing with just loads and loads of bullshit from people
and absolute nut jobs. Probably call.
Because and Art Bell was cool because I was listening the other night and they're playing old episodes of Coast to Coast AM, and Art Bell would be like, yes, you're on Coast to Coast AM, and this guy on the other line was like, yeah, Art, I'm a time traveler, and Art didn't skip a beat. He was like, oh, what time have you traveled from? And he just totally is just playing along with this guy.
That might be kind of a fun job, because it would just be you get the crazies, but they can't really necessarily hurt you because you're on the other end, and Just hear their crazy, entertaining stories.
Later on in the conversation, Art Bell was like, "I'm amazed at how well you've your English skills are. If you're from so far in the future that you can still speak our dialect and everything, and you're still using like slang from our time." He's got a sense of
humor too.
Yeah, like he's totally calling these people out on their bullshit, and like they don't even like the people don't even realize that he's doing it. So I think that's kind of funny. But anyway, This is about a Chilean government, the Chilean motherfucking government, releasing baffling UFO footage, and
I watched it. I don't know. In today's day and age, with Photoshop and all these other video editing software, it is so much easier to fake something, to make some fake video that looks real, but it isn't. That's my kind of thing. I'm waiting on, like, I need to see some actual like expert look at this video, because when I was looking at it, it looked really clean for military whatever drone video or something. Maybe that's how they look. I'm not an expert on that, but some of the other videos that I've seen, I didn't remember them looking that clear. There was some kind of grain involved. Now maybe it's I've been looking at drone footage from years ago, not modern drone footage. I'm no drone expert, but I don't know. It just looked a bit polished, and I don't know. I don't know.
It's taken from November 2014, and a Chilean Navy helicopter spotted a UFO during a routine flight. They filmed the unidentified object using an infrared camera and noticed two different radar stations above the UFO, but neither base could detect it. Strangely, the helicopter's radar could also, quote, not see the object, but it was clearly visible to the pilot and co-pilot on board. The lengthy encounter featured one additional and very bizarre detail, in that the UFO apparently ejected a spray of hot gas or water twice while it was being filmed by the infrared camera, which was picked up.
Well, that's what that black cloud was.
Attempts to communicate with the object produced no response, and the helicopter eventually departed from the area after the UFO disappeared into the clouds. The remarkable footage was then turned over to the CEFAA, which is a group tasked with studying UFOs under the auspices of the Chilean Air Force. According to the organization, the video was subjected to an exhaustive investigation by a committee, which includes a variety of aviation experts. However, despite numerous meetings to discuss the footage and event, the group could find no explanation for the UFO sighting, and nearly every conventional source was eliminated thanks to a wealth of weather, satellite, and radar data made available to them. An airplane, a drone, space junk re-entering the atmosphere, and a weather balloon were all dismissed as possibilities. An analysis of the video determined that the UFO was indeed a three-dimensional object and that the footage was not hoaxed. Ultimately, having been left with no possible answers, the final conclusion from the group was that the object was a genuine, quote, unidentifiable aerial phenomenon, or as we like to call it, a UFO. In the annals of promising UFO cases, this newly revealed 2014 event may be one of the strongest to come along in quite some time, both for the video evidence as well as a stunningly thorough investigation by the Chilean government. Unfortunately, as always seems to be the case with UFOs, we are still left with more questions than answers when it comes to mysterious
that's
phenomenon.
The thing. I mean, you're always going to have questions about it. Because I know there were other footage, other photos, and other things you thought, oh, it's totally legitimate. There's no way. It's a 3D object. And then, oh, you find out later, oh, it was a hoax? Well, I had no idea. That really did trick me. I don't know for sure. I mean, it does sound pretty legitimate. But at the same time, like, wasn't that group that was investigating it, weren't they like a UFO group?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's not really an unbiased source.
Well, you're never gonna get
investigation, somebody investigating.
Yeah, you're never gonna get a truly unbiased source when it comes to UFOs. You're gonna have.
Well, what I'm talking about is not necessarily source is not the right word. What I meant was an unbiased group that's overseeing and analyzing the footage.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to get that either. Honestly, I think that...
Why not? I mean, because I know in the past, I think there was a lot of skeptics who had their own organizations, and well, that's another thing. They're biased for skepticism.
Right. So
I think it would be better if you just had somebody who's a photo expert and a video expert.
There's
and
nothing
have no say
wrong
in
with
either.
calling something a UFO. All it means is unidentified.
No, absolutely not. It could be unidentified flying object. Could be some experimental aircraft from some other country, or it could be a spaceship. It could be an alien spacecraft. But UFO doesn't necessarily mean automatically aliens in origins.
Yeah, it's not like that ancient alien show with the guy with the funky hair.
Show that completely just delegitimized History Channel even more than it already was. And God, I think I saw like one episode and I couldn't even finish it. I was just like, no, this is all bullshit. Sorry.
The History Channel, aka the Hitler Channel, because literally all they like talking about is World War II shit and apparently ancient aliens. Yeah,
aliens.
I don't know. I guess why I wanted to share or talk about this was because I like how this is from 2014.
Yeah, it's really recent, and that is a good thing to discuss because there hasn't been one of those, at least that I've heard of or heard about in the news. So, that's pretty cool. But then again, there isn't a show like Sightings or Unsolved Mysteries that talks about those things.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm not going to lie, folks. I mean, I have people that ask me sometimes, like, well, what's your opinion on this phenomenon and that UFO case? It's like, guys, I'm not interested in it enough to be like one of these people who research this shit as a hobby.
I think it's interesting. But yeah, I'll read a book about stuff, and maybe if I read a case that sounds particularly interesting and I think would be worth discussing, sure. But yeah, I'm not a UFOologist or anything. I'm not going to go to the UFO conventions.
Yeah, I'm not a Tom DeLonge on this shit. I haven't dedicated a large portion of my life to studying and researching UFO cases. I'm mainly more interested in Unsolved Mysteries, the show, and how awesome just all the elements came together to make every segment entertaining, regardless of what they were talking about. But yes, I do skew more towards the UFO stuff because I just find anything that's mysterious as far as other forms of life out there, that to me is very fascinating.
It is, because it's scary, but at the same time kind of comforting. Because you're like, okay, we're not alone in this universe. I don't think we are anyway. I don't think that's possible.
Absolutely not. So yeah, that's that. I will post a link to that on our Facebook page, so you can go and check that out for yourself. It's actually got a video, and it's at the top of the page, but it's not a video that just tells you what the fuck it's saying. It's the actual video of the radar footage that shows this kind of thing, and it's radar, so it's it's not like this HD.
It's like black and white.
Yeah, it's not this HD video of a UFO, but it is good quality video though. It's not grainy and all that, because let's face it, the 1080 video is on everything now. It's on fucking spy glasses and drones and phones and Home Alones. I'm sorry, I just felt the need to rhyme there. Kevin McAllister's and anyway, that what am I fucking talking about? Anyway, so the video quality.
I don't know.
Yeah, I know, I don't either. I gotta stop hitting that meth before starting the podcast. Helps me concentrate though, and it makes my teeth look great. But no, 1080 video is on everything now, so don't be surprised if you see good quality video of stuff. Because well,
yeah, I guess I just haven't seen a lot of radar video like that. So it was kind of just looking at it, was like, wow, that looks really clear for something like this.
Yeah, much like all the hidden cameras I have installed in your house, Mike. It's all 1080p now.
So speaking of strange phenomena, that ties into the first segment we're going to be discussing today on this episode. We're only doing 2 because the second one is really lengthy. So, but it'll be worth it.
Long as a bitch.
Yeah. So anyway, this one is the Gourdon Light. Now, I selected this one because I thought there was a certain sort of sentimentality and kind of like down-homeness about it. This kind of folklore, kind of local folk legend thing. And Mainly because there's a photo of this light, which is a bright red light in like the darkness on this railroad track, and it scares the shit out of me.
It's menacing. It is very menacing.
It's menacing. I'm looking at it right now. It's the unknown. It's just this red light in the middle of this railroad track with all these trees around, and it looks like something out of a Stephen King movie or straight from a Stephen King novel, or it reminds me of those scenes in Ghostbusters 2 that had like the red lights and stuff like that in it. And just red itself is just like stop, caution,
Yeah, I mean, for me, it kind of plays on my biggest fears that I had as a child, because like I remember being at church when I was a kid, and we'd be like out, and it'd be like late at night. It'd be like night church is what I called it, like when I had to go to church at night or whatever. And we like all the kids would be back in the playground area, and it'd be like pitch black, and we'd see something out in the woods, like a glow or something, and we'd all run like hell back to the main area, and as a kid it would scare me so much, but like I always took comfort in the fact that there was some kind of explanation for what I was seeing, and my brother or somebody would be like, oh, don't worry, that's just the dew on the trees that reflected in the light, and that's what you saw.
Or that's the reflection of some car headlights or something.
Yeah, but see, this preys on my childhood fears, because there's nobody knows what the hell, why these lights are out here, what they are.
Yeah.
What causes them. It's very similar to the ghost lights.
The Marfa lights.
Yeah, the Marfa lights, which is
so
we should cover sometime.
The Gourdon Light is described as a mysterious glowing light that floats above the railroad tracks in Gourdon, Arkansas. In December of 1931, a railroad section foreman named Will McLean, he fired one of his workers named Lewis McBride because he apparently sabotaged a section of the track and caused a freight train derailment. In retaliation, McBride then beat McLean and killed him with a pickaxe.
God damn.
It's pretty intense. He went all My Bloody Valentine on his ass. McLean's body was later found by a search party along the side of the tracks. McBride confessed to the murder and was later executed for the crime. Now, not long after the murder, people began seeing a mysterious phenomenon named the Gourdon Light, a strange glowing light that floats along the railroad tracks. Many believe that the light is the spirit of Will McLean, haunting the tracks, and the light is his lantern, which he carried while working on the tracks. One of the first sightings was by a conductor named John. While driving a train, he saw a light on the back platform and observed that his light was following the train before it shot up in the air. It continued to follow the train for over a mile and then shot into a cemetery. And I could see why you'd think, oh, it's a ghost thing, because it goes straight into a cemetery. Since then, thousands of people have gone to the train tracks in hopes of seeing the Gourdon Light. Several eyewitnesses say that the light flashes slowly, floats about 1 to 3 feet in the air, and then veers off and then vanishes completely. To this day, there have been no complete explanations for what the Gourdon Light may be. Now, Gourdon is a small town in Arkansas that has about a population of 2,700 people, and this is their most famous attraction. It's going around, and it was kind of also sort of like a coming of age ritual for some of the kids in the town, and you go out and go in the woods and see the Gourdon Light. Became kind of a tradition within the families there.
Yeah, and a lot of them who are being interviewed, much like the Martha lights on the other Ghost Light segment. A lot of the townsfolk were just kind of like, well, let's leave it alone, let's leave it be. Like one lady was like, I want my kids to go down there and see these lights and all that. And I don't know, like the first thing I thought about was like, you want your kids to stay in this shitty small town, lady? Like, you don't want
anything better for your kids.
You don't want them to move to a more like cooler, like hip town. Like you want to just stay in this podunk town in the middle of nowhere. Okay. Like generations of your family where you have like, one McDonald's. But apparently McDonald wasn't a good, or Roy Kroc wasn't a good guy. So
maybe they don't even have a McDonald's there.
Which could
they
be
have a McDowell's.
A McDowell's. A McMeaties. That was what Invader Zim, that cartoon Invader Zim. I think that's that was their McDonald's knockoff. It was McMeaties. I don't know how that cartoon became such a hipster cartoon or whatever.
I don't know either. It was a goth thing, I think.
Yeah, it's like kind of a gothy thing. I never thought the show was that great. But yeah, I mean, you know, like I love stories like this. This is pretty cool. I mean, I love how there's no explanation for it. Well, one guy on the segment was a physicist, and his kind of thoughts.
Yeah, Dr. Charles Lemming. He investigated several theories as to what the Gourdon Light may be. One theory says the lights may come from headlights on the interstate. However, Charles was able to find several eyewitnesses who claimed to have seen the light before the interstate was made. Another possible explanation for the Gourdon Light is swamp gas, which makes me think of Men in Black. It wasn't anything. It was just swamp gas. Created by decomposing vegetation, was spontaneously combusts. However, many eyewitnesses claimed to have seen the light when it was windy, so it could not be swamp gas. Another theory, and also swamp gas. I mean, just the title, it just sounds awful.
Swamp gas. Sounds too similar to swamp ass, which is something I usually get after hours of sitting in one spot while doing. Yeah,
you live in Florida, so you probably have witnessed and smelt a lot of swamp ass.
Wow, that was really gross, Mike. We have class and a level of dignity that we maintain in this podcast, and you just broke that. But I mean, the swamp gas thing. I mean, I'm sorry, folks. I just got to bust this out. That is just ridiculous. Like some of the theories. That's like for the Martha Lights one. It was like some theories state that it's a jackrabbit with a lightning bug in its mouth and it's running around the prairie. Some of these theories are just like, come on, dude. Like
that's like the guy who thought the Mothman was a bird.
Oh yeah, well. In all fairness, that guy, he didn't think that's what it was. He was just saying that's
I know.
Yeah, but it was still like, it's like, God, get real, people, you know? Like, I get it. It's unexplained, and you want to, like, you know, in your world, everything
you want to debunk it.
Yeah, everything has to make sense in some people's worlds, you know? Nothing can be unexplained. There's got to be a...
But even the scientist guy said that it's not swamp gas because there were eyewitnesses who claimed to have seen the light when it was windy. Another theory, though, is that the light is the PS electric effect, which occurs when quartz crystals, under immense pressure, emit an electric current. Gourdon sits above large amounts of quartz crystals in a fault line, which supports this theory. That actually sounds kind of plausible, to be honest. Also, many people claim the Gourdon Light was seen after the murder of Will McLean, which was around the same time that a major earthquake occurred on a fault. However, what cannot be explained is how the current migrates above the surface and into a ball-like shape. And I find that fascinating. There can be unexplained earthly a phenomenon that's actually from Earth. It is created by something that's within the Earth. It's not ghostly or there's a natural explanation for it, but we just don't know what it is yet, or we don't know everything about it. So I think that's a pretty plausible theory. If I was going to go with something, I'd probably go with that. It seems like there's a lot of evidence that supports it. But I could see why the people of the town are like, just leave it alone. We live in some podunk town in Arkansas. This is like our only
claim to fame.
Claim to fame. It's our lame claim to fame.
I jive with you on the Weird Al.
Yeah, so really, it's their attraction. Like, who else is it? Nobody's going to really want to go to Gourdon on purpose if they don't have this Gourdon Light.
Every time I
have to be honest, though, I could see why it'd be pretty scary.
Oh yeah,
for a lot of people, because you're going around in the middle of the night already, as it is, and that's already scary. Going out in the middle of the night in the woods. I wouldn't be. I don't even know if I do that. Even just going into the woods in the middle of the night, and then you see some light. Oh man, that would be pretty creepy.
Yeah, I mean, during the day is one thing, you know, but at night there's just I don't know
the atmosphere.
I don't know what it is about the human brain or whatever, but it's just something about the darkness is just more. It's probably that natural instinct.
You're not expected to see a lot of light in the darkness because it's all dark. So when you see something that's really bright and you don't know where it's coming from, yeah, that's very scary because there's a contrast there.
Well, to me, I think it stems from our primitive development of fight or flight. Like, you know, back in the days where we were kill or be killed, you know, where we had to run from predators and all that, or what have you. I think that the darkness represented an uncertainty because you couldn't see a predator. So I think a natural fear response started to happen, in our brains or whatever when we were, evolving through the years or whatever. Whether you want to call it natural selection or evolution, that's up to you. But it depends on your religious background or not. But I think that's why we as humans are afraid of the dark, is because it represents a potential threat, because we can't see if there's a potential predator. Which is a lot of times on Unsolved Mysteries, there are predators in the darkness.
Well, also, I mean, we've seen, if you've seen a lot of horror films or seen ghost segments on Unsolved Mysteries, the dark represents places where a lot of scary, weird, unexplained shit happens. So, like Bill Murray says, Venkman says, and Ghostbusters 2, sometimes shit happens, and who are you going to call? But there's no Ghostbusters there to save you. You're in the middle of the woods and there's some fucking light that's showing up out of nowhere. I mean, that's a very chilling thing to witness.
I think with this, though,
if it is ghostly in nature, though, then the ghost is kind of a dick. Like Will McLean, like, really? Why are you haunting the tracks, bro? You're scaring the townsfolk.
Oh, that doesn't seem to bother ghosts, from what I've learned.
Yeah, I know. But usually it sounds like the ghosts do that because they're not benevolent.
They're malevolent.
Yes.
It took me so long to learn the difference between those two words. I'm not going to lie.
It's okay. They sound similar.
Think you're better than me, Mike?
No, I don't.
You think you're smarter than me?
No, I don't.
You might be. I don't know. But yeah, no, I mean, I think that's pretty interesting. I mean, I think with this, I would want to see it just because, like, it seems like all the lights do is just sit there. They just chill. It's not like they come racing after you or anything like that.
No, I mean, racing after. Oh, shit.
So, I mean, I'd check these out, I mean, they're
like floating around, just blinking on and off, just hanging around. And then dissipate somewhere.
They didn't mention in the segment if these lights, like I don't think they mentioned people trying to actually chase after these lights, like on the ghost light segment, where people actually tried to go.
That's kind of funny.
Well, they tried.
I'm just imagining that
banjo music playing in the background, but no, they try to get
lights.
They try to get closer and closer to the light, and it's like almost like a mirage. Like the closer you get to it, it just keeps going further and further back or whatever.
Yeah, if that's the case, that probably would be some naturally occurring thing.
To me, that would be unnatural, because if it kept going away further and further, then that's.
But isn't that like a mirage, though?
Well, I think a mirage is caused from heat coming off from the ground.
Yeah, maybe it's a different type of mirage. Maybe it's a different type of earthbound mirage, or maybe it isn't. Maybe the Marfa lights are some UFO thing, or I don't know. Maybe this is the spirit of Will McLean.
Well,
but I think it's the quartz thing.
Yeah,
still a cool story though, and it's a good segment, and it's memorable. I mean, the image alone is enough to strike fear in anyone, and it's that type of down home, small town sort of thing that does make the segment.
It's that good kind of biscuits and gravy episode that'll make you want to boil a hog's ass with a spoonful of hot sauce. I don't...
Boil a hog's ass? Does anybody even do that?
I don't know what I just said. I don't know. That makes me more frustrated than a three-legged dog trying to bury a turd on a frozen pond. Sorry. Mike Morris, Moon Pie Face. Anyway, moving on.
People are like, "Oh, stop making fun of that guy."
I know, man. That guy needs his own advocacy page, because the amount of people who stuck up for that guy. Now we're getting into some real the real fan shit. If you even know what we're talking about right now.
You are all like, leave Mike Martin alone.
I do not believe that there.
It's a different. Leave Mike Morris.
I did not believe that with the medications that I was on at the time, that their polygraph could adequately account for those conditions. My friends had told me to secure an attorney. That's why I did not take the polygraph. My face looks like a moon pie, and it's probably not as delicious as one. I may or may not leave any of that in the podcast. I don't know. All right, moving on. So
the long ass, long as a bitch.
Okay, guys, if you're not comfortable right now, if you are, let's say someone listening to this right now is like, say, I don't know, a window washer for like skyscrapers, like
you're hanging upside down.
Yeah.
On a bar.
Get to a comfortable place and settle the fuck in, because this segment is long as hell. Very long. I can't think of any analogies right now for length, but it's quite long.
Anaconda long. Yeah.
My anaconda does not, in fact, want any unless you have buns, hon. I'm just full of the corniness. This is the corniest podcast. Like, I've been the most corniest on this podcast than any other podcast that we've done. Like, the jokes have just been awful. Not funny. Oh yeah, let me just say real quick, when I like shit on myself, like, like self-deprecating humor, I don't actually think that I'm like this sad, depressed, because like some people out there have like messaged me and they're like, I hear the tone in your voice and you sound sad. It's like, no, I just think it's funny to like make fun of myself. I don't know. I'm fine, people, don't worry. Despite the videos I've been releasing on my YouTube channel. In case you're curious, it's youtube.com/dancingwithghosts. Anyway, that was not a shameless plug. I really had an emotional moment that I just said. Anyway, in honor of people in the United States, at least, getting the day off from work for Martin Luther King Day, I thought it would be fitting to cover the Martin Luther King case. Unsolved Mysteries did a segment on this. I suspect that half the show was probably this one segment.
Yeah.
Because this is a long one. This segment without commercials is 30 minutes, and that's very unusual for an Unsolved Mysteries segment.
That might have been the whole show.
Might have been the whole show. Yeah, it might have been. Although, I mean, I feel like it deserved it. Although it does beg the question, because there are conspiracy theories and stuff with the Martin Luther King assassination. It kind of begs the question: why did Unsolved Mysteries never do an episode of the JFK assassination?
Yeah.
They did. Yeah. They even did RFK. I mean, they didn't quite go into the whole assassination, but they went into the pictures that were taken of Robert F. Kennedy before and after he was assassinated. But they at least touched on it. But yeah, JFK, they didn't touch that one with a 10-foot pole. But here they're talking about Martin Luther King. Both have their big groups of conspiracy theorists. Martin Luther King, as everybody knows, was one of the first big advocates for equal civil rights for black people in America during the 60s and, the Jim Crow law era times. And he was he preached nonviolence and passive resistance, passive aggression. Like, oh yeah, you guys segregating us is just great. We're loving it. It's awesome. Real nice. That's what he preached. No, I'm just joking. No, he was inspired by Gandhi and all that, and he was generally regarded as a really, really good dude. Although you have, I've heard rumblings from Jackie Kennedy talking about how behind the scenes he was actually kind of a dog, and how he would talk about women and this, that, and the other, and whatever. I don't have any evidence to substantiate that, but apparently JFK's wife was not a huge fan of Martin Luther King. So anyway. We're going to dig into this cheesecake here, right here and now. So sit down and throw up your feet and relax your socks. Here we go. So Martin Luther King arrived in Memphis on April 3rd, 1968, a day before he was assassinated. King checked into the Lorraine Motel and began planning a march in support of striking city sanitation workers. So city sanitation workers were on strike. King's presence at the hotel was well publicized. Across the street was a series of rundown buildings, which included a rooming house run by a woman named Betsy Brewer. On April 14th, just before 7 p.m., a tenant named William Anschutz, that's a German last name actually, found the door to the communal bathroom locked. Now, first, let me just say, communal bathroom, gross. Ugh.
Yeah.
Ugh. Communal bathroom, that would be the worst thing ever. You're sharing a bathroom with everybody in a hotel, motel, whatever you want to call it. Room and board. B&B. Anyway.
Probably pretty stinky.
Pretty smelly, got some stains of an ambiguous nature in there, I'd imagine. Inside the bathroom, James Earl Ray, a career petty criminal, loaded a rifle and took aim at the Lorraine Motel. King stepped outside to go to dinner. a single shot rang out. The bullet struck King in the face, throwing him violently backward onto the balcony. Several friends rushed to his aid. His wounds were severe and irreparable, however. According to the government, Ray rushed to the room that he rented that day, and he wrapped his rifle along with an overnight bag in a bedspread. In the hallway, Ray was seen by Tenant Charles Stevens, mere seconds from a clean getaway. Officials believe that Ray saw police cars outside of the hotel. With all his stuff in hand, he got nervous and he dropped his bundle of evidence in front of the Knipe Amusement Company.
That particular part of the case is like, why? Like, I understand. You're like, okay, yeah, I'm nervous. I'm going to get caught. Why would you leave the murder weapon anywhere? Like, yeah, you could get caught, but wouldn't you want to go on the run with the murder weapon so nobody finds it? Doesn't make any sense.
No, I mean, that part of it is very, like, why would you, like, you know, the literal smoking gun you left, like, outside of a store where someone's easily going to just walk out and see that and be like, oh, well, hey, a rifle, that I should probably tell police about this. Someone just got assassinated, over by this hotel, this famous, guy. So,
it's not like he threw it in a river or did anything of that nature.
Nope, just plopped it down right in front of a storefront. A moment later, 3 witnesses inside the building saw a white car, possibly a Mustang, speed away. Police recovered the rifle, but
as well as his personal items.
Yeah,
because they were with the rifle. So I mean, that's the thing. It's bad enough that it's the rifle, but like your wallet and all your other personal items, and then they were able to identify the guy.
Well, by the time they did identify Ray, he had fled the country. 2 months later, Ray was apprehended by British authorities in London's Heathrow Airport as he attempted to board a flight to Brussels. March 10th, 1969, in Tennessee, Ray pled guilty to the shooting of Martin Luther King. Ray was sentenced to 99 years in the penitentiary. Days later, Ray fired his attorney and claimed that he had been coerced to plead guilty. He claimed he was part of a conspiracy, man. Over the years, this theory has gained popularity. Ray spent most of his adult life in and out of prison. His crimes were almost exclusively holdups and robberies, none of which involved violence. Indeed, to many, Ray seemed like an unlikely candidate for such a horrendous crime. On April 23rd, 1967, almost a year before the King assassination, Ray escaped from the state penitentiary in Jefferson City, Missouri, where he was serving a 20-year sentence for robbing a grocery store. For some, Ray's next movements indicated a conspiracy. Ray initially fled to Chicago. Yo, what up, Valerie? And then in mid-July to Montreal. Using the name Eric Gall, or what sounded like Gall, he discreetly solicited the criminal underground for a phony passport or seaman's papers. He said seaman. According to Ray, he was eventually approached by a shadowy character using the name Raoul. Ray claims that 9 months later, it was Raoul that set Ray up for the King assassination, but said when they first met up, Raoul was only looking for an accomplice.
The name Raoul just, I don't know, it's kind of funny to me.
Raoul.
This sounds like a Latin lover.
My name is Raul Consuelos. Oh, Raul, you're so foreign and interesting. Again, folks, I don't know what the hell's gotten into me on this one. So, when he first met up with Raul...
The try not to cringe challenge episode.
I know, right? I'm saying some pretty cringe-worthy... Jeez, I'm having a stroke, too, apparently. When they first met up, Raul was only looking for an accomplice in a smuggling scheme. There was no assassinations going on at this point. It was just like, hey, you're already on the run. You're looking for some papers. Yeah. I can get you your papers.
Ray claimed that in exchange for Ray's agreeing to perform certain tasks, evidently of criminal nature, 1, he was provided with money, and 2, he was promised at some point he would be given identification, a passport, something he needed to get out of the country.
Ray alleges one of his first jobs with Raoul involved smuggling unknown contraband across the U.S.-Canadian border, what up, Morgan, near Detroit, for which Ray was paid $750. Ray was... first of all, $750 in, 1967, that had to be, $10,000 now.
Yeah, that was a lot of money.
That was a lot of fucking money. Holy crap. So anyway, Ray was then directed by Raul to go to Alabama after this whole smuggling thing. Ray has detailed all of his activities to his new attorney, Dr. William Pepper. Ironically, Pepper had once been associated with Dr. King. In 1978, Pepper was convinced by one of King's closest friends to meet with Ray. Pepper is now convinced that Ray's story is true and that Raul is the key to the conspiracy. Quote, "What Raul wanted to do was to keep Ray on a string, have him at various points, places, pay him bits of money, have him do various things, so that he was available for use anytime they wanted to use him, always with the promise of giving him these travel documents." Ray says that in Birmingham, Raul gave him $2,000 and told him to purchase a car. 7 months before the assassination, Ray did in fact buy a 1966 Mustang. Ray says he then drove to Nuevo Laredo, Mexico, for another smuggling venture. A month later, Ray traveled to Los Angeles to await further instructions. In mid-March, less than 3 weeks before the assassination, Raul told Ray to head to Atlanta. There, just 5 days before the assassination, Raul outlined their next criminal enterprise. The next bit of activity involved selling guns. The scenario he developed was one of which involved the purchase of some sample weapons that Raul would show to some of these gun runners. Once they made their selection, they would be bought in volume. Ray alleged that later that day, he and Raul drove to Birmingham. Following Raul's instructions, he went to a gun shop where he purchased a .243 caliber rifle. I don't know if I'm saying that right. 243 caliber rifle.
Yeah, 243. I think it's 243 caliber rifle.
I don't know.
With a telescopic sight.
Some of you pissed off about the militia Kentucky shooter.
I could be wrong. I mean, maybe it is point. Maybe it is. I think of like a 45 is a 45 caliber, right? So wouldn't it be 243 caliber or 243 caliber? Maybe. Yeah, 243 caliber. I think it's 243 caliber rifle with a telescopic sight.
Any fucking hoozles. Raul instructed Ray to buy a .243 caliber rifle, which he fitted with a telescopic sight. From the people who witnessed his purchase of the rifle, he seemed to not know the first thing about rifles. He didn't know what he wanted. He had to return the first rifle and exchange it for a different one. He made it seem more unlikely that he was working alone. If
that was the case,
yeah.
That does add a lot of credence to this conspiracy theory, because they're like, well, he's the one who only did it by himself. Why does he not know how these rifles work, or doesn't know what rifle to use, or any of that?
What, did he practice on some watermelons in his backyard and go, nah, that one ain't gonna get it, better go and return it? So, according to Ray, he gives the rifle to Raul a day before the assassination. And that was the last time he saw the rifle.
Actually told him to exchange. Ray said Raul told him to exchange the weapon the next day, giving him specific instructions on what to buy: a Remington Model 760 Game Master pump action.
Right. Well, I said he exchanged it, but I didn't go in depth about what he exchanged it for. But yeah, that's what he exchanged it for. According to James Earl Ray, that was the last time he saw the rifle. The investigation concludes it was that rifle, the Game Master that he exchanged it for, that was the rifle that was used to kill Martin Luther King the next day. On the evening before his death, Dr. Martin Luther King delivered one of the most stirring and prophetic speeches of his life. So one where he goes, "I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you." And then that kind of like ends the sample of speech that they're wanting to convey, about him saying how he may not get there with everyone. Less than 24 hours after he spoke those words, Martin Luther King Jr. would be shot down dead. His accused killer, James Earl Ray, pled guilty and the case was considered closed, but 3 days after his conviction, Ray recanted his guilty plea, saying he was just a pawn in an elaborate plan to kill King. But his claims of innocence were dismissed and the case remained closed. In 1976, a select committee of the House of Representatives were convened to reinvestigate the assassinations of King and JFK. The committee concluded that Ray was the lone killer of King. It is now the belief of Walter Faulkroy, the chairman of the MLK subcommittee, that the conviction was wrong. Quoting Mr. Faulkroy, he says, "When you look at a murderer, you look at three things: who had the motive, means, and opportunity. I am now not convinced that James Earl Ray had the motive, means, and certainly the opportunity to pull it off as it was done."
Yeah, after I saw this too, I kind of had questions about that I really had questions before because I didn't really know about this other sort of stuff. Now, it could be, James Earl Ray is trying to make up stuff so he doesn't, so he can get out or whatever he's trying to do so he's not guilty. But there's a lot of details to this, though. And I know there are some super detailed conspiracy theories as well that are just pulled out of people's asses. But I don't know. I mean, you have some legitimate people like this guy, Fauntleroy. Maybe that's, I don't know if that's how you say his name, like Fauntleroy. Fauntleroy.
Your guess is as good as mine.
I agree with his statement here. He says when he's talking about James Earl Ray committing the crime and then getting out of Memphis and then out of the country, he says, I find it more difficult today to believe that James Earl Ray, acting alone, pulled off the crime of the century, was able to get out of Memphis, out of the country, into Canada, to get 3 passports, and to go all the way to Europe without help.
Right. I mean, I'm going to save my final conclusion for the end of this because I have so much stuff I got to get through. But
yeah.
Now, to this day, James Earl Ray maintains he did not shoot King, but the FBI stands by their finding that Ray was the lone gunman. Now researchers claim new information corroborates Ray's claims of conspiracy. Walter Falkroy are calling for the release of the committee's files, which have been sealed till the year 2029. And he's also calling for a new investigation. I love watching Unsolved Mysteries now, and, like, for instance, another case like the death of Elvis Presley.
Yeah.
Elvis Presley's private autopsy that his father Vernon commissioned, those are sealed until the year 2020, I believe. It's cool watching the show now, knowing that we're getting closer and closer to the years that these sealed records are going to be available. Because I imagine back in the 90s, watching this show, you're thinking, Jesus, I'm going to be an old man by the time I get to find out about this stuff. But looking back now, it's like, oh, cool, we'll find out.
2009? Is that what you said? So they should have already been opened up then.
No, 2029.
Oh, okay, 2029.
Yeah,
okay.
So we still got 12 more years. But in our lifetime, we'll be able to know more about the investigation of this committee.
If it actually gets that far again, like, if the files don't disappear.
Yeah, like the RFK picks did, but that's a whole nother segment that we've yet to cover. So at 3:30 p.m. on the day of Martin Luther King's killing, James Earl Ray claims to have met his mysterious contact, Raoul, at a cafe. Raoul told Ray to go to Betsy Brewer's rooming house upstairs. He wanted Ray to rent a room and then await instructions. Betsy Brewer's, the boarding house that she ran fronted Main Street next to the Knipe Amusement Company, where the rifle would later be found. The back windows, however, near the communal bathroom, faced the Lorraine Motel. At 4 p.m., Ray rented out a room and brought along an overnight bag for appearance's sake. Raoul asked Ray to leave the Mustang parked nearby because Raoul wanted to use it that night. The next hour is pure speculation. Ray himself has changed his story several times, but always maintains he left the boarding house at 5 p.m. and never returned. Just before 6, he drove the car to a service station, and at 6:01 p.m., Martin Luther King was shot. Ray claims that at the very moment King was shot, he himself was totally unaware of the event and was driving from the gas station back to the rooming house. Quote, as he got to the corner of Calhoun and South Main, he saw police everywhere. The state makes a great deal of the fact that James fled the scene, but one must remember that James was a fugitive. He was on the run and certainly not going to hang around when he saw the police, so he turned around and began to make his way out of Memphis, end quote. And that was Pepper, William Pepper, who said that. For many skeptics, Ray's apparent lack of expertise with firearms seems to argue against the official account. Quote, in the Army, he was trained with an M1, and he was at the lowest level of ability. The idea of loading one shot into that .30-06 and gambling everything on that one shot makes no sense whatsoever. But then you have retired FBI agent Joe Hester that came in, and he was a great interview on this segment, I thought.
Yeah, he was.
He had a lot of personality. He says, quote, You have to bear in mind that the back of the rooming house of the balcony of the Lorraine Motel where Dr. King was killed was less than 100 yards. With a telescopic sight at such a short distance, almost anyone in the world could have killed Dr. King. It really required no great marksmanship whatsoever. Many people feel that the shot that killed Martin Luther King was not from the window of the boarding house, but from the bushy abutment between the boarding house and the hotel. Quoting Walter Falkroy, "It's now clear to me that the shot has come from the ground below. It's been reported to me by at least 2 people that the shot came from the bushes below." End quote. Eyewitnesses did report 2 men dressed in white that fled from the bushes after the shot rang out. But again, retired FBI agent Joe Hester declared, We never were sure that there was a man in the bushes, and even if there was a man in the bushes, we feel like he has absolutely nothing to do with the murder. We were, and I still am, convinced that the fatal shot came from the window behind Betsy Brewer's," end quote.
Yeah, he's very confident, and it's the point of being cocky.
Yeah.
Now, he also, he was talked about, they mentioned one of these witnesses, there's when Ray ran from his room in the boarding house, he was seen by another tenant named Charles Stevens, and Jim Lasar says Stevens was a shoddy witness, so this is a different guy. Where he's all like, from all accounts, Stevens is so dead drunk that there's no way of relying upon his testimony about the shot.
Yeah, I was gonna get to the town drunk Charles Stevens in a second. The official version states that Ray ran from Betsy Brewer's place, which was observed by the aforementioned Charles Stevens. However, there are serious doubts about his credibility, and as Mike said, by all accounts, Charles Stevens was so dead drunk that there was no way of relying upon his testimony about the shot. So that guy, which was William Pepper, who was saying this, he's arguing for the conspiracy, for this rival guy. But then, former Chief Counsel House Select Committee on the assassination, this guy comes in and he goes, "In fact, we did not rely on him for witness identification. What we did rely on him for was having sufficient senses to be aware of a loud noise down the hall and to open the door and see somebody run by."
Yeah, and this guy was G. Robert Blakely. And I could definitely, I could see somebody, no matter how drunk they are, they should be able to be aware of some loud noise.
Yeah.
But...
So then they go on to say, what you have to realize about Charlie Stevens is that he was looking for a reward, and that became very much a business for him and his concern to try to be credible. Because, apparently this guy was an opportunist, and he saw, hey, they want my testimony, they're going to have to pay for it.
Yeah, he was trying to get the $100,000 reward that had been put up for anyone who could identify the person who killed Dr. King.
Oh, good Lord. $100,000 back in the 60s? Geez, he'd be a millionaire by today's standards, at least. So, in his flight from the rooming house, Ray reportedly ran by the Knipe Amusement Company, dropping his weapon in a panic. But a former defense investigators believe it is highly improbable that any killer, no matter how panicked, would drop a bundle of evidence so thoroughly incriminating. Quote, "It strikes many people, myself included, that looks like a setup, that somebody else gathered that evidence up and planted it there." And that, again, was Dr. Pepper, who... Oh, my God. His name's Dr. Pepper. I just realized that. That's fucking awesome. Where's Dr. Thunder or whatever too? Because that's an offshoot of Dr. Pepper. But
I've never heard of Dr. Thunder.
That might be a regional thing.
I've heard of Mr. Pibb. I've heard of Dr. something else.
Yeah, we got Dr. Thunder here, but so the attorney, who's apparently also got his doctorate, he's going on to further suggest that evidence was planted. A dusting of the rooming house turned up a number of fingerprints that were unidentified, but none of them were James Earl Ray's. Again, Jim Lasar says, "I've worked any number of cases where you don't find fingerprints when you think you should. You may find a lot of smudges and smears, but you won't find a fingerprint that in it of itself is complete enough to make a positive identification." The gun itself was void of any fingerprints except for 2 of James Earl Ray's.
Hello?
Yeah, can you hear me? Okay, so this has never happened on the podcast before. My fucking internet just went out, and we lost the Skype connection with Mike, so we are too far into this for us to start over, and I mean, we were almost kind of towards the end anyway, so I'm just going to go and finish this one up solo, although using my phone's data plan, I'm still able to get his thoughts through Facebook Messenger here, so I can still put that in his opinion. You just won't hear him actually saying it. So anyway, I was talking about how the gun itself was void of any fingerprints except for 2 of James Earl Ray's. The FBI did a swab test to see if the gun had been fired. However, they never did a swab test on the gun that they believed to be the murder weapon. So that's kind of confusing because it's like they did a swab test to see if the gun had been fired, but they never did a swab test on the gun that they believe to be the murder weapon. So there's more than one gun now. I'm not exactly sure what that meant. Quoting the retired FBI agent, Jim Lesser again, he says, "My recollection was that there was a spent shell in the chamber, so common sense would tell you the rifle had been fired," end quote. The FBI could not match the bullet that killed King with the rifle. They could only say that the bullet was consistent with that type of rifle, which is like, I don't know, that's, why wouldn't you go that extra mile in an investigation like this and be like, oh yeah, this bullet definitively was discharged from this firearm into Martin Luther King? But no, they didn't do that. They said, well, this is the type of ammunition that goes to this type of rifle. But according to Dr. Pepper, it was also consistent with several million other types of rifles, end quote. Even for those who believe Ray's story, there's one nagging question. If James Earl Ray was indeed innocent, then why did he plead guilty? Ray claims he was coerced by his attorney who wanted exclusive publishing rights to Ray's story. If Ray had testified in court about the conspiracy, his story would have become public domain. The crucial element of Ray's story was the elusive Raul, who moved Ray all around the United States. I find that hilarious that his attorney was already like, there's gold in them there hills. Let me secure the fucking publishing rights. I mean, this lawyer, man, pretty savvy guy to have the foresight to be like, oh, I can secure the publishing rights and sell it to Hollywood and, make my millions that way. And I mean, if so, wow, he really gave Ray the shaft, if that is in fact what happened. I mean, that's pretty unbelievable. And I also didn't really know until listening to this, I didn't really know that, I guess I should have known. I didn't realize that if somebody testifies in court, that automatically becomes public domain. Because, I mean, sometimes you hear the court cases where the cameras aren't allowed, recorders aren't allowed, whatever. So I didn't realize that stuff becomes public domain. So one of the people involved in this segment goes, in our investigation to identify Ray and to find out what he did and where and when, we turned up nothing to indicate that there was a Raul or any other conspirator of this crime. In 1975, former defense investigator Harold Weisberg filed a lawsuit against the FBI. He received 60,000 pages about the King case. 60,000 pages! That's more than a phone book. I mean, that's more than the Bible. It's more than the phone and the Bible combined. Holy crap. And I don't think I heard that number wrong. I believe they said 60,000 pages about this case. I mean, good Lord, if that doesn't make you think that there could possibly be some kind of a bigger spider web that has been woven than what they want you to believe, I don't know what does. Because, I mean, an open and shut case, which is what they made this to seem like it was, an open and shut case isn't 60,000 pages, people. It's just not. I mean, that's... you're talking, there's all kinds of details going on in these pages that this Harold Weisberg guy got his hands on. 3 years later, Weisberg found evidence of the files that Ray had been involved with a J.C. Hardin. 3 years later, because that's how fucking long it took him to read through all this shit. So this J.C. Hardin guy comes into the picture, and this became proof positive to him, at least, that this could have been a conspiracy. Quoting this guy, he goes, "When I was going through the files, there was a man by the name of J.C. Hardin who called Jimmy from Atlanta." He's deciding to call James Earl Ray Jimmy at this point. I guess they're good buddies. He called Jimmy from Atlanta. Well, Jimmy didn't return the call. Hardin then went out to California to meet with Jimmy. This was confirmed by the FBI. So is it possible that J.C. Hardin was in fact Raul? At least the timing was more than simple coincidence. It was a live lead. One thing you have to question, given the history of this whole thing: Hardin goes to California, Jimmy goes east where Dr. King was killed. It's not like pushing buttons, but the next thing to it, and it should have been investigated. In 1968, the FBI pursued the lead long enough to at least produce a sketch of J.C. Hardin given to them. The description was given to them by the manager of the St. Francis Hotel. However, as soon as James was arrested, the Hardin investigation was dropped. So, quoting Walter Falkroy again, he goes, "We knew nothing about Hardin. I would like to find Mr. Hardin, and I'd like to further investigate Mr. Ray because I don't feel like he's telling us everything he knows." Well, duh! James Earl Ray has refused to say whether Hardin and Raul are one and the same. In addition, he has been unwilling to make a positive identification of Raul. According to the retired FBI guy, Jim Lesser, he goes, "I'm not convinced that there is anybody named Raul involved in this case." He's just a straight-up skeptic about the whole thing. I mean, he's kind of saying all this, during this whole interview, this hardened retired FBI guy is saying all this stuff very, almost with like a half grin. Like he thinks it's pure bullshit. He thinks that, they got the right guy back then, and all this other kind of speculative crap is just that. It's crap. And then you got, his new attorney, Dr. Pepper, which is not a soda, it's actually a guy's name, saying that James Earl Ray is a classic patsy. He's the classic, go-along guy, the bumbling wannabe career criminal who's just a puppet to this criminal mastermind, Raul. Quoting Falkroy again, he's saying, we do not know the whole truth about this. We need to know in the decade of the 90s so we don't meet the same fate as Martin, Malcolm, Bobby, and John met." Thought that was funny that anytime you want to date anything, just like say the year in, the interview or the song or whatever it is. I think, and that's funny, I remember growing up hearing that a lot, like, it's the 90s, baby. Like, come on, it's the 90s. Like that meant something, like that, so much more impactful of a statement because, like, oh, the 90s, this, freaky time where things are happening. So yeah, this kind of ties into that, it's the 90s. We need to know for there's a new generation of leadership on the streets now, and we need to know what went on with this King thing. So, it doesn't happen to future people, which to my knowledge, I mean, just right off the top of my head, I'm trying to think if there's any U.S. figure that's been assassinated in recent memory that was as big as JFK and MLK and, all that. I can't really think of anybody off the top of my head. So the big thing here is they did not conduct a conspiracy investigation. They conducted a shooter investigation. And there are a lot of people who feel as though there should have been a proper conspiracy investigation conducted as well. I can't think of off the top of my head or not, but with the JFK assassination, I mean, I believe that they looked into all angles of that, like as though, there was the second shooter on the grassy knoll and all that other kind of stuff, and that apparently wasn't done here. So that's kind of the big controversy. Now, if you want to ask me what my particular opinion of this case is you take you take a buffoon like James Earl Ray, a petty criminal, who is holding people up but not actually killing them, and now all of a sudden he commits, to quote Falcroy, the crime of the century. It is doubtful, highly doubtful in my mind that he was working alone. Just based on his travels, which they never really said could be substantiated with evidence, but, according to that. And as Mike, because Mike's still messaging me from Facebook now, Mike was saying on here, there's just too much detail. His story is just there's too much specific detail in it to just say that it's across the board bullshit. So I definitely don't think he worked alone. Martin Luther King was a guy who rubbed a lot of people the wrong way back in a really dark time in our country's history. Unfortunately, when it comes to racists and messed up people, they go all the way up to the top. There are people in high positions of power who also belong to the Ku Klux Klan. I mean, to this day, it's still happening. And I don't think for a second these people aren't pulling strings to, help snuff out people that they don't particularly like or find convenient with the kind of stuff they're saying. I do think, however, over time, because of the persistence and because of the demanding equality for all, I think these kind of things have stopped because finally maybe some of these corrupt people, for the most part, have gotten kicked out of positions of power. But back in those days, in the 60s, where racial tensions were at a fever pitch, yeah, I absolutely think that Martin Luther King could have been assassinated and, a cover-up could have easily happened. And, you had to have somebody because Martin Luther King was too well-liked of a character to just snuff out. So somebody had to get the blame, and this guy, James Earl Ray, was a good, he was a good patsy, And then you got the whole attorney thing, wanting the publishing rights. It's just so specific, and I don't think that James Earl Ray was a smart enough guy to cook all of these elaborate lies up. Nothing about this guy says intelligence to me. He's tasked with going in a gun store to buy a gun, and he can't even get the right fucking gun, and he has to go back and exchange it for another one. That is documented. That is that factually happened. So no, this guy definitely didn't work alone. I'm reading some of Mike's stuff here as he's messaging me. The whole aspect of him getting out of Memphis so quickly and out of the country as quickly as he did is questionable. If you put a gun up against my head and asked me what I thought, I would say the U.S. government might have been involved in MLK's assassination, as well as JFK's. This is what Mike's saying right now via Facebook. Sorry, folks. This is the only way we can do it right now. Trying to get this podcast out, as early as possible without having to re-record it. Both were politicians threatening to make radical changes to government. They were advocating changes that a lot of higher-ups didn't like, which is what I was just saying. That meant to the end of power and some financial gain for some. JFK wanted to get rid of the Federal Reserve and take away power from the CIA and give it back to the people. Martin Luther King was an advocate for similar ideas, for changes in civil rights and so on. Now, it might not have been the U.S. government that was directly involved in the assassination. It could have been some other radical racist group with power, like the Ku Klux Klan. And maybe some members of the group were government officials. Again, what I was just saying. There's a reason why I work with this guy. We tend to agree on stuff. So, do I believe that it was all conspiracy? Yes and no. I do believe that Ray was involved in the crime, but I don't believe he acted alone. He wasn't totally innocent. That's my thoughts. It's a pretty controversial and crazy case. I do believe some group like the government or a racist-fueled one was behind the assassination. They went to drastic measures to stop changes from happening and maintain the status quo. And thankfully for us all, they failed to maintain that. Agreed, Mike. Well put. And the civil rights movement continued after MLK died. Very, very good input there on that. I agree with all Mike's sentiments. I agree that same thing. I'm not going to sit here and say who I think it was, and point fingers, but to say that James Earl Ray acted alone is just not on the mark at all. So with that, happy Martin Luther King Day. Enjoy your day off, but also, if you can go and watch any of Martin Luther King's speeches on YouTube, he was a very great speaker. And I mean, he not single-handedly, he had a lot of help from a lot of different people, but he definitely affected change in the United States for the better as far as equal rights for all people, but, especially black people, because back then, I mean, good Lord, I would not want to be a black person living in the South in the 60s. That would be a very scary time for me back then. And they had to put up with that and all the other, kind of crap that went along with it. I mean, you had to have balls of steel to be alive back then if you were black. I mean, the bravery, to deal with that kind of harassment. I mean, you didn't even do anything to these people, I mean, so for Martin Luther King to come up in there and be thrown in jail and deal with all that, I mean, just good Lord, man. I mean, you got to have almost like a from above, like a spiritual mission to have the strength to go through all of that persecution. And he did it, I mean, I can't say that I respect the hell out of that. Just like I respect people like Gandhi and just anybody who stood for, Stephen Biko in Africa, anybody who stood up against oppression, these people are made of steel. And I don't know. I mean, I can say for a fact that I'm not sure I have that same kind of constitution. So Mike has dropped out, unfortunately. I think I'm going to go ahead and cut the podcast. On that note, I don't know if this is going to be shorter or longer, probably a little bit shorter, because Mike and I kind of like feed off each other and we can kind of keep a conversation going longer than sometimes it maybe should. But whatever, that's what you people like anyway. You people, you like that? You like how I just group y'all into a group? You people? I don't know, you're listeners. It shouldn't be that offensive, right? So if you want more of me and Mike on YouTube, more free entertainment, you can find me at youtube.com/dancingwithghosts. I do vlogs. I taste test food. I review video games. I did a video chronicling the downfall of physical media, like CDs, like what happened with that. I do all kinds of stuff on my channel. It's really like a bag of trail mix. You don't know what you're going to get in there. Is this a peanut? Is this a raisin? Is this a macadamia nut? Hopefully it's nothing you're allergic to. That's the only thing I hope for. Make sure you check out Mike's channel. He's the movie guy. He reviews movies and he does some other stuff on there, but movies is kind of like his main thing, and he's very good at breaking down a movie and taking the piss out of movies too. His rants are pretty epic. It's youtube.com/OCP Communications. I mentioned our Patreon and Facebook page earlier. Okay, so I'd also like to mention Thomas Hatfield, who actually designed the logo for our podcast, the one that you're looking at right now, the pretty little uncovering unexplained mysteries with the purplish background in the woods. Pretty awesome. He designed this t-shirt called Mad Stacks, and it's got Robert Stack, just standing epically in front of this fog, what looks like a like underneath like this tunnel or bridge or something, and it's a badass shirt, dude. It's really cool, and you can actually order that from this site called Rage On. I don't know. I ordered one tonight. As soon as he put the link on our page, I ordered me one because I am rocking that shirt. I mean, it's a big ass print of Robert Stack, and it's pretty cool. So that is actually on our Facebook page. That's another thing that I'll put a link on our Facebook page for, so you can get that. I'm not sponsored by him or anything like that, but it's a cool ass shirt, and if you're into Unsolved Mysteries merch, which there's not a whole lot out there, that's a fan made shirt that you can get. That's pretty awesome. I am actually thinking, and you guys can tell me if you think this is a good idea or not. I am really debating, and I think I'm leaning more in favor of. I am thinking about getting a Robert Stack tattoo on my the top of my bicep, a portrait of him with his trench coat on and the fog and all in the background. Really thinking about doing that. So let me know if you think that would be a good idea. With all that being said, that's the end of the podcast. Hope you guys enjoy the rest of your week and be safe out there. And nighty night. Okay, no, I'm not gonna end that way. Have a good night and be safe. And fuck it. Bye.